So it was at the La Cienega Temple, early January, February. And Vishnu John, he wasn't a Swami yet, he was a brahmachari, and Srimati and Kausalya, they made rod puppets. They were beautiful. And we would go to Griffith Park on early Sundays. And they would take the puppets out and they would put on just a sort of a little improv puppet show to attract the people in the park. And then we would pass out invitations for everybody to come to the free Sunday love feast. So one day, they were going to put on the puppet show, and it was a puppet show of the life of Prahlad Maharaj, and Srila Prabhupada came. And he came in, they put a special seat for him, and he sat down, and this was the first time I was ever seeing Prabhupada in such an informal setting. So the puppet show started, and Vishnu John, he wrote this and sang this little song that would be Prahlad singing, and it would be something like, if you like singing, Krishna says you can sing for him, and if you like dancing, and he would say, do you like dancing? And everybody would say yes, and he would say, Krishna says you can dance for him, and it went on like that. So I looked over to see how the Jagat Guru, who I had fear and awe and reverence for, how he was reacting to this puppet show. And when Vishnu John started singing, Prabhupada lit up. He was smiling, his grin was so huge, and he started laughing. And I saw that there was this side where Srila Prabhupada had this innocence and this childlike quality that he could enjoy just like regular people, even though it wasn't in the way that we enjoyed, but it just touched my heart to see him laughing and enjoying this puppet show. So it was very, very sweet. The first really sweet experience of seeing Prabhupada not being on the Vyasasana as the heavy with knowledge guru. It was 1970. I don't remember what month we moved into the new temple on Watsika Avenue, but there was, where the existing temple room is now, there was a sanctuary because the building had been a church. And there were regular seats in the sanctuary. Not only regular seats, but there was a church organ. So Srila Prabhupada really liked that there were these seats, especially for guests who would come on Sundays to the feast. And there were beautiful stained glass windows. And one day, Vishnu John, still not a Swami, after the Sunday feast, and everybody would be so intoxicated, and we were sitting in the chairs, he or somebody would speak, then he got up and he sat down at the organ and he began to play, and we had a kirtan. Well, we were into the kirtan, and Srila Prabhupada's quarters are upstairs in the back, and there's a stairwell, and it comes down and there's a door, which always from the inside was locked. And all of a sudden the door opened up and Srila Prabhupada was standing there. And he came out like this. He put his arms up and he began to dance. And he motioned to all of us to stand up and dance. We all stood up on the seats of those chairs. And Prabhupada was just, he was just beaming, and he was singing, and he was dancing, and everybody went completely wild. I mean, totally wild. And Vishnu John was just playing on that organ. And you know how loud the pipes of an organ can be. It was the most ecstatic kirtan. And I had never seen Srila Prabhupada dance before. And it was like he was floating. His feet weren't on the ground. And I know devotees have said that at Rath Yatra, the year when he was dancing at Rath Yatra, it was the same thing. He was Vaikuntha man. He just absolutely was, he just picked us all up, and we became absorbed in the ecstasy of Prabhupada, what he was feeling. It just transmitted through every single one of us into our hearts, and we just were out of our bodies. Prabhupada transformed us like that. It was beautiful, really beautiful. I'm not sure if it was 1973 or 74. It was in the old temple room. I don't remember what year it was changed over to the new one. The Vaikuntha players, a few of them came to Los Angeles. So it must have been 73. And they were doing dance dramas. So they choreographed the story of the killing of Pralambasura. And it was decided that there would be a private viewing only for Srila Prabhupada in the temple room. And because I had my young daughters, I couldn't participate in that aspect, so they invited me to be the music and play the mridanga, to be the musical accompaniment. So we gathered in the temple room, and Prajapati, he did the narration, reading from Prabhupada's Krishna book. Prabhupada sat on the Vyasasana, and I sat right down on the floor at the bottom of Prabhupada's Vyasasana with the mridanga. And as Prajapati began to narrate the pastime of the killing of Pralambasura, the dancers then were playing the parts of the cowherds boys and Balaram. And I think when the time came, I don't remember if it was Prajapati or who it was Pralambasura, but and I would sneak up looks at Srila Prabhupada in between while I was singing Govinda Jaya Jaya and different short bhajans in between when they would just do pure dance. And I would look up at him. And when Balaram killed Pralambasura, and of course Balaram was on the back of a male dancer, and he took his fist and he struck him, I looked up at Prabhupada at that moment. And the look on Srila Prabhupada's face was another one of those looks like when he was watching the puppet show, but it was even more expressive. He was totally there, seeing Balaram punch and kill Pralambasura. And I just thought, wow, Prabhupada has the vision to actually enter into the pastime straight from the Krishna book that he translated so that we could all enjoy these amazing pastimes of the Supreme Lord. But Prabhupada, he was right in there, and he enjoyed it so much. And I remember that Prabhupada said, like he said, the paintings were the windows to the spiritual world, and he said that the dramas made his books come to life. So that was a very special moment for me to be sitting there, getting to play the mridanga and sing, and Prabhupada, for the pleasure of Srila Prabhupada, but getting to be a part of that pastime. It was a very momentous time for me. I was very grateful. So this was Kartik of 1972 in Vrindavan. And my husband and I at that time, we took our twin daughters who were 14 months old to India. And we were going to stay and live in India. He was going to do spiritual sky import business with Manibandha in Calcutta. But first we went to Vrindavan because Srila Prabhupada was there. So we arrived, and another devotee came with us. His name was Haridas. He's deceased now. So we got there, and the devotees took us in to Prabhupada was staying at Radha Damodar. And they took us in, and Prabhupada said, "Oh, so Krishna has brought you here." And I thought, wow, I never thought like that. Krishna actually brought us here to Vrindavan. And he said, "Have you taken prasadam?" I said, "No, no, Prabhupada." And he said, "You're following Ekadasi?" I said, "No, Srila Prabhupada, I'm sorry, I forgot." I said, the devotees from London, they had given us some bread, and when we were standing in the line to get permission to come into the country, I said my children were hungry, and I gave them some, and I forgot, and I ate some also. I said, "I'm so sorry." And Prabhupada said, "Kirti Kirti, give them some sweets." Where I thought that, oh my God, he's going to say I'm going to hell. I've committed the most abominable sin imaginable. But he just totally just dismissed it and said to his servant, "Give them some sweets," like that. So that showed me how, even though breaking Ekadasi is such a very heavy thing, because it was unintentional and because it was innocent on my part, Prabhupada was just very, very merciful and very compassionate, and he didn't chastise me. So I felt a lot of mercy and a lot of love in that lesson of realizing that up the road, if anything like that should happen in exchanges with devotees, to let them know that when it's unintentional. And he didn't say, "Oh, follow the next day." Later on we learned that. If you break Ekadasi, follow it the next day. But there was not even any mention. And that was the most relaxed I had ever seen him, because we know later on he said Vrindavan was his home. So with the no shirt on, back in the chair with his hands behind his head, I got to see yet another side of Prabhupada that I had never seen except in the little performances when he was very childlike. But here he was just totally in his element at home in the holy Dham of Vrindavan. It was very wonderful. So after we ended up living in Calcutta, it became end of 72, then beginning of 73. Things were a little challenging, and I had this intense desire to want to go to Mayapur because I had the name Chaitanya Dasi, so I wanted to go to where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared. So we heard a rumor that Garga Muni had vacated the hut he had built for himself there. And it actually had one electrical outlet and one light bulb. So I begged and pleaded, "Please, please, let's go to Mayapur." So we took the train and we went to Mayapur, and we moved into the little hut with the mud floor. And there were just 5 devotees living there then, 5 brahmacharis. Was Jayapataka a Swami in 1973? I don't remember. Anyway, he was plowing the fields, and after some time, it was brought to our attention that the men weren't happy having a grihasta couple living there. So we were told that Prabhupada wanted to speak with my husband. Well, in Calcutta. He refused. So he said, "You go. I'll take care of the girls. You go." So Smarahari and Smarahari took care of the couple of cows that were there. And we went to Calcutta. So I got there, and they said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, Prabhupada wants to speak to us." "Not you, your husband. Go back." I said, No. I came all the way here. At least I'm going to stay a couple days." So I got to go on a couple of programs. Prabhupada spoke at the Lions Club, and I don't remember anything that he said, but I was allowed to bring him his glass of water like that. So then went back to Mayapur, told my then husband, "Prabhupada wants to speak to you. We have to go." So we went. He finally relented. And when we got there, Prabhupada's room was his office, you know, in Calcutta. It's still there. We went in, and in there were 3 sannyasi godbrothers also sitting down. So we sat down, and Prabhupada began asking what we were doing and what was the problem. And mainly, the men didn't want to give any of the milk from the cows extra because having 2 children. So the complaint was that we didn't really have an income. And so Prabhupada began kind of a back and forth discussion. Well, he could learn to make coal, mridanga, like in Navadvip. And that way then he could make the mridangas and they could be shipped to other temples, and he could get some kind of income. So then the one godbrother, sannyasi godbrother, said, "Nah, Prabhupada, nah, that wouldn't work, not possible." He said, "They should go back to America." I said, "But we came on a one-way ticket, and how could we go?" He said, "You just go to the government, you get repatriated, you give them your passport." I said, "Well, what does that mean?" He said, "It means you can never come back to India." So Prabhupada was sitting there, very, very thoughtfully. I looked at him thinking, okay, please get us out of this mess. What are we going to do? So then Prabhupada, I remember this was early 73, he said, actually, he said, Mayapur is meant for sannyasis, brahmacharis, and vanaprasthas. Householders are meant to support the temple, not be supported by the temple. Therefore, you should become independent, completely independent of the temples. And that was it. And then we got up and walked out of the room. I thought, we've been kicked out of ISKCON. I didn't know what to think. Where are we going to stay? How are we going to live? Anyway, it took a while to understand that Prabhupada was setting a precedent that householders should not journey off to India on a one-way ticket with young children and think that any temple is going to provide for them. So it was very, very heavy, but I was able to process it and understand the lesson that Srila Prabhupada was giving. So in Los Angeles, Srila Prabhupada was giving one lecture, and he talked about how in India there was a grandmother who had a very nice temple within the home. And she was very disappointed that the family members, mainly the children and the grandchildren, were not attending Mangal Artik. He said, so she decided to impose a fine upon the family members and told them whoever does not attend Mangal Artik, they have to pay a fine of a certain amount. So then Prabhupada said, he said, for anyone who isn't coming to Mangal Artik, your fine will be to distribute 1 set of Krishna books. Is that all right? And everybody went, Jai! Yes, Srila Prabhupada! So I lived a few blocks away from the temple, and I couldn't make it to Mangal Artik with my 2 children, but I would carry a set of the small Krishna books with me, and I would think, if I ever meet anyone, I'll try my very best to distribute a set of Krishna books, because in this way I will be paying the fine and Prabhupada will be pleased. So that was a very nice story that I always remembered from the lecture.
Janilo Premadana Karuna Prachur